We all have been dealing with a lot since the pandemic has started. Indian healthcare workers are trying their best to control the situation. National Institute of Disaster Management encourages you to take the preventive measures against the coronavirus. Always wear a mask and sanitize your hands frequently. Also follow all the protocols of social distancing. Get yourself vaccinated from your nearest vaccination center. Until then, stay home and stay safe.
Once again, very good evening to all of you. This is the mental health, webinar on dyslexia and mental health of children being organized by Child-Centric Disaster Risk Reduction Center, National Institute of Disaster Management, in association with Vellore Institute of Technology, Chennai. And I welcome the patrons, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, sir, Executive Director, NIDM New Delhi, and Dr. G. Viswanathan, Founder and Chancellor of Vellore Institute of Technology. And I also welcome Professor Santosh Kumar, Professor and Head, CCDRR Division, and Dr. Sarada Rajkumar, Professor, Dean School of Social Sciences and Language, VIT Chennai, Dr. Kumar Raka, Program Officer, CCDRR NIDM, and the eminent speakers, Dr. Maya Ratna Sapapati, Professor from School of Social Sciences and Languages, VIT, and Dr. Jayasri, Founder and Director of Center for Integrated and Learning Development Child, and also the coordinator, Dr. Binu Sahayam. And once again, a warm welcome to all of you, though the patron and all other panelists are not available, even though let us start the program now. So once again, I welcome all the speakers and the participants to this webinar on dyslexia and mental health of the children. And this is the issue which we need to discuss at present. Most of the children are being facing this kind of issues, and being a child-centric disaster risk reduction center, it's our responsibility to address such kind of issues. So in that, it's our honor to associate with the VIT Institute. This is a warm welcome address. Now, let me hand over to Dr. Binu Sahayam to introduce the speakers, please.
Okay, thank you, sir. I am Dr. Binu Sahayam from the School of Social Sciences and Languages, VIT Chennai. I wish to share few highlights about our esteemed institution. Vellore Institute of Technology was established with the aim of providing quality higher education on par with international standards. Vellore Institute of Technology for the past 30 years has made a mark in the field of higher education in India, imparting quality education in a multicultural ambience. VIT was established by a well-known educationalist and former parliamentarian, Dr. G. Viswanathan, founder and chancellor, a visionary who transformed VIT into a center of excellence in higher technical education. Government of India recognized VIT as an institution of eminence. Atal ranking of institution for innovation achievement, Government of India recognized VIT as a #1 private institution for innovation. VIT have been ranked among the top 8 universities in India, among the top 501 to 600 universities in the world, according to the recently released Working University Rankings by Subject 2021 by the Times Higher Education UK. We are also glad to share that 10 professors of VIT are among the top 2% of scientists in the world, according to the study conducted by the Stanford University. VIT Chennai is spearheaded by Dr. Shekhar Viswanathan, Vice President, Dr. Sandhya Pennarati, Executive Director, Dr. Rambabu Kodali, Vice Chancellor, and Dr. V.S. Kanchana Bhaskaran, Pro Vice Chancellor. And now I take the privilege in introducing the speaker, Dr. Maya Ratna Sabhabadi, currently working as an Associate Professor in the School of Social Sciences and Languages. She has done a PhD from IIT Madras. She is presently guiding 8 doctoral students and published more than 35 papers both nationally and internationally. She has won research grants from Government of India and state government. She has been awarded as the best faculty for the year 2016 and also received research awards. She is working on many research topics, some to specify educational psychology, cognitive psychology, and then behavioral psychology, developmental psychology. He has done a funded project on dyslexia and mental health. In short, an experienced person both in teaching and training. I now invite Dr. Maya Ratna Savabadi ma'am to deliver her talk on dyslexia and mental health of children.
Good evening to one and all. I introduction. I thank NIDM for giving this opportunity as institute to coordinate with them and talk about dyslexia and mental health. So this is a topic that we all need to know, and we have to understand it so that we will be able to understand children who are also having this problem. So now, what is dyslexia? Dyslexia is a learning disability, and there are different types of learning disabilities. So first, what is learning disability? You should understand that learning disability is a neurological condition that interferes with an individual's ability to and produce information. Okay, it affects the ability to listen, think, speak, read, write, spell, or also sometimes mathematical calculation. These children have difficulty. Okay, now let us try to understand the child. So I'm sure all of us would have seen children in school and would have found that they are always the ones who were really intelligent and capable. And we also would have come across students who had difficulty in getting marks. So our only way of judging the intelligence or the capacity of the child was based on the academic grades they used to get. But so what we used to think was, in case he's not able to perform well, then he is a dud. He is not intelligent. But now with lot of research, we have found out that that these children have certain difficulty in reading and writing, and it's not that they are having any problem with their intelligence. So that's the first thing that I would want you to understand. So these dyslexic children can see well, hear well, they do not have any motor disabilities, they do not have any intellectual disability and or emotional disturbances or any kind of disadvantages that we think the child is suffering from. The only problem is they are having this disability, but it is not visible. This is an invisible disability. When I say invisible disability, what I'm trying to say is the child looks as normal as any other child, talks, laughs, enjoys, and participates in everything that's happening around. But only when it comes to reading, writing, spelling, or comprehension or mathematics, this child has difficulty. So what we have to understand now is that this child may not be thought of as having any difficulty because the child seems to appear normal. So luckily, the only thing is we are fortunate to say that children are not having any mental retardations or mental abnormalities or challenges. They are normal like any other child. So first, I've got this clear that these children are intelligent, capable children. Okay. Next thing is this: that they have a small kind of neurological disorder, which is causing them difficulty in learning. So now there are different types of learning disability. So first to say, one is dyslexia could be based on reading. The other one is dysgraphia. So what is dysgraphia? This is there are problems with the spellings and writing. Basically, they have a problem in handwriting. So what happens is these children cannot judge the space between two lines. They may go outside the line. They may write words that are very large that does not fit into the line because they are not. They can see, but what I want to understand is the vision is there, but the processing that happens, there is a problem. So please understand this, that Because I know when a child was dyslexic, he was taken to Shankara Netralaya. They tested him. Vision is perfect. So first we thought that the child is having some visual problem, therefore he can't see or read or write. No, the problem is only after they get the perception of the object or the words that they see. When it is transformed into language, there is a lag or there is a difficulty. And when you're talking about dysgraphia, again, we're saying that they have problems or they struggle to write in a proper form. So we say the handwriting may not be neat. The next thing is dyscalculia. Here it involves maths. So they have trouble even recognizing numbers, symbols, understanding basic maths concepts, addition, subtraction, only to a smaller level. They have difficulty in sequencing, meaning give them two. For example, if it's going to be division, you go to long division which we used to learn. So there you take a number, then divide it, write the number on top, then subtract it, then see whether it whether it's divisible by the divisor. And all these things get complicated. They find it very, very difficult. Then they also have problems in expressing their thoughts. See, this I have to make you understand very well, that they have a problem when they're going to express their thoughts into words. See, I told you they have language problem. So their thinking will be perfectly all right. They will know what they're feeling. They will know what they want to say. But when they say something, it's not what they actually want to say. First, I'm giving you a picture of this, the difficulties. Then I will go into what is the trouble that they go through. Now, we know that dyslexia is there's difficulty in learning languages. It's the first name. Okay. Now, what could be the causes? There is no proven cause for learning disability. There could be some related causes. Most often they say it is hereditary and sometimes problems during pregnancy and birth. So please understand, we always say it's very, very important that the mother should have a good pregnancy, a happy pregnancy, and it should not be traumatic, should not be stressed, because we really don't know when the brain is developing. If because of certain stress or certain kinds of anxiety or frustration that the mother is going through, it can affect the growth of the child, or to put it accurately, the development of the brain. And then another problem that happens is during childbirth, and this is what has happened with quite a few people. That is, when the child is coming out of the womb, it sometimes gets stuck, or there's a lack of supply of oxygen for a few milliseconds, and that is enough to cause damage to the neurons in the brain, which can never be repaired. That causes deficit in learning. So that could be one of the causes. Then sometimes incidents that can happen after childbirth. That could be some kind of serious illnesses. So we have what is known as meningitis or something, pure nutrition, the child is exposed to toxins, lead, and all these can contribute to learning disability. Then we go, now what I want to say, which is the most important part of today's meeting or the webinar, is to understand the mental health of a dyslexic child. So now all of us know that what is this child going through, or what is this child's difficulty. Okay. Now we have to find out how is it that the child feels when the child is actually going through this disability and trying to carry on this day-to-day activity. First thing I would like to tell you is, when the child goes to school, PKG, we send them very early, PKG, LKG, the child is very happy, the child is intelligent, it makes friends, there's no reading and writing. And it's an early age, okay? And it is very good because the child is very, very intelligent. It happily goes to school, comes back, and everything is fine. And we are also very happy. Oh, my child has got admission in the best school and is doing very well. Everything is fine. Then when the child goes to maybe first standard, that's the time when the teacher finds that he's having some problem in recognizing words, in writing. Sometimes he may say something and may write something, or there could be, what to say, like a D can be like P, or the reversal of alphabet. This will happen. This is the time when a teacher has to pick these clues and find out whether this child has a disability. So now we have been doing a lot of work and we're getting a lot of awareness saying that the teachers have to be aware of this learning disability. It is not for them to label, but it's only for them to understand and diagnose it at a very early stage, that the child doesn't suffer for a long period of time, misunderstood by the parents, by the teachers, by the peer group, by everybody around, saying that he's not able to do it, he's an idiot, he's lazy, he's not interested. See, the child is good in everything. Only thing is he has a little difficulty in reading and writing. That's all the child is suffering from. There's nothing wrong with the child. Okay. Now what happens to this child? So we are going to talk about the mental. So now this child has gone to school, everything is fine. So most important thing is, this child at school, what happens at school? Once they might diagnose the child having problem, or they may not diagnose it, but the child gets labeled. When the child gets labeled, maybe the teacher is not going to call him dyslexic, she's going to call him differently. It's lazy, you're not interested, you have some ego problem, you have no manners, you have no respect. Whatever I say, you don't listen to me. You don't what to say, see how the other children are doing. So again, one comparison is also going through. And this child doesn't know anything. The child is so innocent. He doesn't know. I'm trying, but teacher is shouting. See, look at the child's feeling. I'm doing whatever they're asking me to do. I am giving my best. See, this I learned in life, and I was meeting a lot of these special teachers like Jayshree ma'am and all of them, where one of the teacher told me, Savitri ma'am, she's from Madras Dyslexia Association. She taught me one thing, very, very beautiful thing that I wish to share with everybody. She said, Maya, understand that every child wants to succeed. Every child wants to give the best. All of us want to be appreciated. All of us want to be said, you are great, you are good. Similarly, this child also wants to get it. And he's trying hard to get it. But we don't understand, because we are measuring his interest, his hard work only on the performance. You understand what I'm trying to say? If he performs well, then we say, yes, he is successful. Unless we are measuring him based on the result rather on the effort taken. So please get it very clear. We have different people, the audience of different people, students, teachers, special educators, everybody is there. So this is what we have to remember. The next thing is, what happens to this child? This child has a lot of difficulty. This child has a lot of difficulty when it is in a social situation. Why is it? What is the difficulty that it has? This child by itself can develop little bit of aggression, little bit of anger, little bit of anxiety. So this child is continuously trying hard to perform, to get better. And how much ever the child is struggling, the child is not able, it is trying hard, but it's not seeing the success as much as the child wants, or as much as the parents want. See, I'm telling you, we parents, when you have children with learning disability, we become more greedy. Take it from me. We become more greedy. When the child does a little bit, next is we want to take biggerly. By another special educator, and these people are very important. Mrs. Nirmala Pandit. She so very sweetly, she said, when they take 3 steps forward, they come back 2 steps down. So actually, when we think that they have progressed 3 steps, they have progressed, but they quickly come back soon to a level which where they were just performing. So it takes for what I'm trying to say is success is not like for any other child. It's like it's a lame man trying to climb the stairs. He goes up, then he struggles, he stops, he says, maybe today, may not be today, or I will put in more effort. Then he says, no, I'm stopping, I'm not going to try. So this child is battling something which is very, very difficult. We don't understand that at all. We only see the report card and say, I thought, what happened? Next thing, what happens is, what happens to the child in a social situation? First thing is, it already has lost this self-esteem. This is very, very important. See, first remember this, the first 5 years of life is very important for a child to develop his self-concept. Within this 5 years, if there is any inferiority complex or anything the child is going through, has to be resolved. This is what Erikson says, that it has to be resolved within that age, so that later on in life, he becomes a person with a lot of self-esteem, confidence, willing to take challenges. He's a bold person. But when this period, when he himself is struggling, insecure, so during that time, for the child, all the negative emotions is what it's feeling. So today we're going to talk about mental health, and I'll be talking about the emotional well-being, the social well-being of the child. So think of the well-being of this child. First and foremost, we find that he is always having increased anxiety and fear for failure. He is anxious. He is anxious because I'm trying to do well. I'm doing well, but why I'm not? The child doesn't even understand. But why is it when I get marks, I get low marks? The child won't even know how to check whether it was a spelling mistake or whatever it is. All that it knows is I'm trying hard, but I'm not able to succeed. So this is not happening once. This is happening every day in most of these subjects. The language, medium of language could be whatever the medium of language could be. It's happening in different subjects. Continuously, this is the message that goes to the child. And when it continuously this kind of message goes, there's a sense of anxiety which leads to frustration, and more than that, the child has fear of failure, fear of embarrassment. Now what happens? Everybody knows he will not get to high marks. Everybody knows he is going to make mistakes. So this kind of a labeling takes place. This kind of image that he is projected to the whole classroom, teachers, parents, friends, everybody. Then next what happens is he loses confidence. When do we lose confidence? We lose confidence because every time we try and we are defeated, we say, okay, this is not meant for me. I just forget it. I cannot do it. So this is the time where we as parents or teachers or special educators or other family members are supposed to give him that confidence, saying, not that we're going to give confidence saying that he's going to be great in writing, reading. It takes some time, but confidence saying that you are good, you are great. See how good you can dance. See how good you make friends. See how good you're playing chess, how good you're playing cricket. So these are the other things which we have to sense, find out what is, quickly encourage that, so that on the whole, the child's self-esteem is protected. Please understand, parents and teachers and friends, that we are more worried about improving his spelling mistakes, improving his grades, rather than improving his emotional well-being. He's a child with so much of feelings. He's a child who becomes very, very sensitive. He can withdraw or he can show boy. You see, how can a child react? So I'm saying this child has, now let us see, this child has grown up. So maybe the first standard, second standard, he doesn't get embarrassed so much. A little later, Little later, he starts feeling shy. That I concept comes and he feels very shy and he feels very ashamed. And when such thing comes, next thing it leads to depression. So what happens when a depressed, first thing is this child has negative thoughts about himself. I am useless. I cannot do anything. How much ever I try, I'm not able to succeed. People don't respect me. People don't look upon me. Then it says, and not only that, it starts even looking at the world negatively. What does it feel? What is there? How much ever I do, all nobody's going to understand me. Nobody's going to appreciate me. All the people around me are bad, or cruel, or evil. The child doesn't understand that from the parents' point of view or from the teacher's point of view, they want him to improve. Genuinely, they want him to improve. But they do not understand the speed of improvement and the effort taken by the child, but they're only waiting for the end result. This is where the whole problem starts. Next thing is, the child even lacks an ability to think even positively about his future. Very difficult for the child even to take a positive step or this is only, you understand that this is only learning the disability that the child is having. This is only, I may have difficulty in maths, reading, writing, spelling. This is a small aspect in his life. I understand during schooling, this is most important. Yes, but we fail to see the other things that the child is. The child wants to play, the child wants to enjoy, the child wants to be cuddled, the child wants to be felt important. The next problem that comes is, which we usually have is, when this child is going on feeling defeated, is defeated, it also loses its interest in learning. The zeal for learning slowly disappears. So it is very normal. So even as adults, if we try to do something, we're not able to do something, then we say, hey, forget it, yeah, we can't do it, leave it. We say that, which is very natural. But see, this learning period is from say 3 to 4 years till 18 to 22. So this is a long process, and during the long process, the child is fighting to succeed with his disability and also trying to make people happy around him, try to make himself happy. See the struggle the child is having. The child is saying, I want to please my father, I want to please my mother. Somehow or the other, I have to get marks. I will do anything to get it. I don't know whether you can really imagine the pain and the pressure that the child is going through. See, we are only looking at it from the outside saying, oh, he didn't study. I'll give you another example. When I was teaching a child, what happened is, he'll study very well, but when he goes to the exam, he will not write. Then again, I was speaking to a special educator. Very sweetly, she said, don't worry, he has studied. Okay? Only thing is, he did not perform in the exam. Can you understand what I'm trying to say? The learning has taken place, but he is unable to perform in the examination or the test paper that is given. So don't worry, the learning will not go wasted. You understand? So we people, we become so myopic when we're looking at results, when we're looking at the child. We cannot think beyond marks. That's what I want to drive that home, which is very, very important. Next, what happens is this child also has no tolerance and patience with difficulty. It's okay, I tried enough. This is, and then the tolerance level goes off. That's the time the child might get into some antisocial behavior, or that's the time when the child will get into fights with others, do something to please others. This is another big problem these children have. These children get manipulated easily because they are dying for acceptance. You understand what I'm trying to say? If somebody in the group says, oh, you do that for me, he's doing that because he wants to be accepted in the group. He's doing anything to be accepted in the group because he's not with the group and not performing like us in the group are performing. So this is something that we have to keep in mind. Then next thing is, these children also have difficulty at home. This is another problem. We are thinking child education is school. No. Wherever the child with learning disability is, it has difficulties in different areas and different places. For example, what happens is, at home, what do? We know that the child has been diagnosed. I'm talking about the diagnosed child. Things are worse if the child is not diagnosed as having learning disability. It's worse than this. So here children who are diagnosed are, at least the parents know it. But even then, there is comparison. Comparison with the siblings, comparison with the cousins. It is natural. I'm not saying no. But you're not doing anything good for the child by comparing it. And it's because you are feeling bad, you want to prove that your child is good, you are trying to pressurize the child. And what happens is, because of this, the child tries to, it gets frightened, it can withdraw, and also sometimes parents also start telling lies. They start misinterpreting the situation. They start blaming the teacher or the school. So the thing is, if you understand the problem very well, when you know the problem very well, then it becomes very, very simple for any of us to really deal with it in a very intelligent way and not in a highly emotional way. You accept it. The problem again comes is accept it. My child this cannot be my child. It cannot happen to my child. Why it can't happen? It can happen to X, it can happen to Y, it can happen to you too. But as a parent, as a mother, or as a father, as a family, you say, no, see, my brother is a scientist. My cousin, my father was, a lawyer. I mean, everybody is educated. And how can it that this child will have learning disability? No, he is lazy. He doesn't want to perform. If I push him, he'll be able to do it. Can't. How can you? Only if he has the capacity to do it, he can do it. But we have your patience, if you're understanding, and if you're going to learn the techniques of how to handle it, then you will be able to succeed. Okay. Another thing that we will also see that is that these children are frustrated in school. Every teacher comes to class. Some teachers, if they are a little kind or a little understanding, they'll just call him by name and say, okay, how are you? Sit down. Because she knows that he may not be able to do well or anything, but acknowledges his presence. There are some teachers I know where they just ignore. They shut him off. He is as good as not present in the class. Okay? Only those who answer. And something worse that happens to these children is, these children are not allowed to participate in extracurricular activities because they're not good in academics. I hope this changes. If they're not good in academics, the school or the management or the teachers jolly well find places or talents where he can express his intelligence, express his capacity. It's very, very sad. I mean, I've seen it. When they're not good in your studies, you can't go for sports. Oh, you can't go for dramatics. Why? Because you're not studying. Because you're not studying, you're not able to cope up with this. Therefore, you will not be able to manage both. Okay, but these children, I'm not talking about normal children who might need to spend more time there. They're not about those children. These children need a platform. It is our duty to give them a platform for self-expression, for them to express their talents. Next thing is, so the whole day the child is at school, everybody's ignoring, nobody's bothered, the child is upset, the child is angry, and then the child is, a child cannot show his anger to the teacher. My God, already she doesn't like me. Already she's shouting at me. How can I show my anger to her? And friends, he has to do everything to please them because every child likes to be accepted, right? And already they have labeled him. And he's going through so much of pain. I'm using the word pain, real pain. I don't know how to express to you. The pain will be so much that he's not able to even express it because nobody will understand. And with that pain, he comes home. And when he comes home, what is the first thing the mother, people who have not understood it better, or people who are ambitious, would say, what happened in school? My God, he just doesn't want that word school at all heard. Did you write? Did you do your homework? First thing they say, what happened in school? Did you read? Did you write? All these things we keep asking them, and that is what they don't want to hear, because whole day they were in school, not able to do what they were expected to do, and unhappy and not able to show their frustration. So immediately when they come, they vent it on their parents and mostly the mother. The mother is the one on whom the child shows anger, aggression, frustration, because he feels that it's not even that he's made a big concept or something. Something tells him, even if mother shouts, I know she loves me. Because the mother, even if she's expecting a lot or whatever it is, the child feels some with the mother. So what I would like to explain to you is, for these children specifically, it is the role of the mother. First thing is, I beg all of them, if they have, I hope we don't have children who have all these difficulties, and even if you have, first thing is, please, when they come home, please don't ask them what happened in school. Did you write your homework? How did you? Just leave them. They will tell. If they perform well, they will tell. If they perform badly, we'll get to know. Let them come and trash out their anger, aggression, frustration, everything for the first half an hour or 45 minutes, because they were jailed. They were, like I said, they were in prison. They were present with their emotions, present with their intellect. They can't express because they're scared. It's not that the child does not understand what the teacher is teaching. The child is scared to say what the teacher taught, because she'll say, oh, you only talk in class. You are not able to write. Don't simply pretend you know something. I mean, see, it's more than most of the time, the child gets only a negative feedback for good. That is where the tragedy is. Then what happens is, the self-image of the child is just crumbled. The child is lost. The child feels like, who am I? What am I? See, the child does not have to sit like us as adults and write notes saying that this is what I feel, this is what I think. It's not like that. The child, at its own age or with its own capacity, what is this? Everybody is shouting at me, everybody is screaming at me. What is wrong with me? I'm good to, I'm able to do this and I'm able to do that. So the child also make a good self-understanding, because a child itself will do one day very well in the test, get 8 on 10. So the child is confused. Am I a good student or am I a bad student? You understand what it is? It is all in graphs and erratic graphs. The child's performance will be. And with that graph, the emotions are also going up and down. This is what one has to understand. We are only looking at the graph of performance, not of the child's feelings or emotions or his social well-being. Emotions can be personal and also social well-being, which we have to look at, which we have to definitely look at and find out what to do. Then what we have to do, what we have to understand more about these children is that these children may have, because of this, it affects their cognition, personality development, and also mental health development. When I say cognition, in psychology we say, cognition is their thinking capacity. See, it is not that they did not have or they do not have. These experiences makes them or affects their thinking pattern, affects their expression of their thoughts, expression of their feelings. And not only that, these children also develop some kind of unstable emotions, and they often have an inferiority complex, and they can't even comprehend why is it that nobody understands me. This is a big question that is there for them every day. I'm sure before they go to sleep, I think nobody understands me. I mean, and you know how painful it is when we say one as adults, when you may be interacting with your husband or your wife or your child or something, When one thing is misunderstood, immediately you say, you don't understand what I'm trying to say. I'm trying hard, you don't understand. That instance with one particular behavior which is not understood or misunderstood, we get upset. But imagine this child trying to express himself. Nobody understands actually what the child is going through. Nobody understands what the child wants. All of us are pressurizing the child. All of us are saying, no, 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 you can't do it, you do it. So the child is saying, no. I remember one child saying, Mom, father is more understanding and mother is very, you never please your mother. This was what it was said. Why the child said that? Because maybe the mother is ambitious, or maybe because and generally I've noticed in many cases, I think fathers or men, and I mean they were students maybe like that with their kid, they tend to accept them and say, okay, 6th standard, 7th standard, 8th standard, when he comes, he become all right. Yes, if he has the support, he will become all right. So all that Jayashree ma'am will be discussing. So I'm just talking about the emotional problem, and sometimes these children can go to an extent of even becoming juvenile delinquent. Why they become? Because of us. It's not that they were born to make crimes. They were actually put into a situation where people did not understand. People were continuously expecting more and more from them, not knowing their limitations or not giving them enough opportunities to express themselves in other talents. You are the cause of it. The child has a problem is a small part of the manifestation of a bigger problem of a juvenile delinquent. So I feel the society, the parents, the home, the school, the teachers, these number of people who are so-called normal are the ones who cannot understand this difficulty. So sometimes I don't have trouble in, a student says, I don't have trouble in learning. You have trouble in teaching. So what do we say? Teach the way the child will learn. Teach the way the child will learn. That is what is most important that we have to do. So then we say, another thing is, these children, when they have this difficulty, they have even other comorbidities like ADHD. They are hyperactive, okay, and they have attention deficit problem. These generally go with one another. So when they are hyperactive, again, that is a problem. Attention deficit, already they are having difficulty. They are not able to concentrate. Imagine how it is. And this child, no fault of his, is going through the whole thing day in and day out without any kind of emotional support or kind of moral support. And what happens is parents also quickly give up. Parents also become impatient. The significant others also say, no, I've tried enough. He is not cooperating. If he is capable, it need you. Adults should understand. Then what we have to say is that since the self-esteem goes down, even his skills are not kind of honed, which is a responsibility of the adults around him to do it so that he feels good. Then you talk about, we find that many children with learning disability have low self-esteem. That's because they do not have a positive environment, they do not have positive feedbacks, and again, their school memories are also not very, very pleasant. And they talk about, when you talk to these dyslexic children, especially when they go to normal schools, they don't have much to talk, because one child told me, why is it that their mother kept me in that school so long? She pulled me out early and put me in a special school where I would have been happy, where people would have, where I didn't have to go through this tension, agony. I'm telling you, the word is agony. Pain, agony is what the child is going through. Okay. Next, we talk about the other kind of problems is at home. And these children again have poor social skills. When I say they have poor social skills, what I mean is, I told you, they can be hyperactive, they can be attention deficit. So imagine when the child imagine that this child is also having learning disability, is also having is also a hyper child. Quickly, the mistake that the child does is magnified because already he is given low marks for his performance in school. Immediately, that's what I want people to understand. Don't evaluate a child and for only based on his academic performance. This is where the whole problem starts. And these children have problems where they want to say something. Please understand this problem. They want to say something. They're very clear in the mind that this is what I want to say. But when they say something different. Actually, they are seriously believing that they have said what they believe. But when it comes out, it's something different. There's a problem when they're trying to transfer the thought into words. Like how will they have problems reading and then comprehending? They again have problems when expressing their thoughts to words. It can happen both ways. So these are and then these children again social skills is they have spatial problems. This is what I've noticed. Many children is they go bang the door or they will push somebody and go. It's not that they're doing it purposefully. They are doing it because they do not have they cannot judge the distance between two objects. Their perception is like that. But I've noticed in many children that they have very good 3D perception. Because I know a child who plays snooker very well, and they can look at the ball differently from what the normal people can see. The point is we have to find out their skills, what is the talents. They're very good at music. So for keeping their for their well-being, the emotional well-being or the social well-being, we have to pick out their talents and we have to see how we can help them. So these are the few things that I have said. So maybe I think I will stop with it now as far as the emotional well-being. So if there are any questions that have to be asked to me, you can ask now. Then Jayashree ma'am would continue, and I was telling you the pain. She will give you the solutions. Okay, because she is an expert, so she will help us. Okay. Any questions can be asked, or you want to wait for both of us to speak and ask both of us questions, that is too fine.
Oh, ma'am, thank you, ma'am. But there are some questions in the chat box.
Yes.
You want to answer now, or shall we finish ma'am's presentation?
If it is directed for the emotional well-being, I will answer. If it's something to do with learning, then both of us can answer.
No, it is about admission for them in professional colleges is one question.
Then we'll wait, Binu ma'am. We'll wait.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am, for enhancing your knowledge on dyslexia. And I now invite Dr. Jayashree Ashok, who will be continuing on the same topic, but will be giving more practical intervention knowledge and how to cope up with these situations. Okay, Dr. Jayashree Ashok has been working with children with learning difficulties for the past 22 years. He is a professional SIM trainer, strategies instruction model trainer from Kansas University, USA, and also a professionally certified educational therapist from Virginia, USA. She is a professional trainer for Forrestine Instrumental Enrichment Program from Israel. She is involved in training teachers all over India and Sri Lanka for the past 22 years. She has been setting up resource rooms in school. She counsels students on behavior modification. She has completed a PhD in economics from the University of Madras. I now invite Dr. Jayashree Ashok to deliver a talk.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, let me take this opportunity to thank the organizers, the National Institute of Disaster Management and the Velo Institute of Technology And thank you so much for this opportunities, and greatly appreciate that there are many people all over who are coming forward to kind of help children with dyslexia. As Dr. Maya was talking about the invisible handicap. Okay, so once again, thank you for this opportunity. And what we are going to see is Maya has given us a great overview of about what dyslexia is and what is the emotional status of children when they go through these academic problems. What are the associated problems? So she has given a very good introduction about what learning disabilities is and what are the social issues or the emotional issues which tags along with it, apart from their academic issues. So what I would work on is, or what I, in my 22 years of experience, is finding or found solutions to many of the problems addressed here. And we have been working with students and teachers doing training, making them aware of how the different ways. See, all of us by now, we know what the problems are, especially parents also, because there are a lot of awareness programs are happening all over, and they know what the problem of the child is. Even right from the kindergarten, we have teachers, because they're going through the training, they kind of understand if the child is having a learning problem or not. But the solution is very important. Again, we start with, there are a lot of strategies, there are a lot of research is going on how to help them. So for every problem, there is a solution. So with that note, I would like to start my presentation. And if there is any questions, please, you can talk about that in the later part. So we're starting with effective strategies. Okay, so here, when you talk about strategies, these are big words. I always feel that these words kind of, can all of you view the PowerPoint?
Yes, ma'am. Make it full screen, please.
Oh.
It's visible, but put it in the full screen.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Now it's fine, please.
Yeah. So what we have to see is what are the strategies. Now, again, listening to the strategies, when we talk about strategies, not a big word and only a profession can handle that. That's the first thing we would like to tell the parents or the caretakers or the siblings or the teachers. It is the simple techniques we are talking about, which you can do to help a child. Again, we have to work on the holistic development of the children. It is not just reading. Dyslexia is a disorder for reading, language difficulty. But we need to work on the holistic development. Because what happens, as Maya told, Dr. Maya was talking about, the intelligence, nothing wrong with the intelligence. If you see in when you kind of describe a dyslexic child, they have average or above average. The intelligence is average or above average intelligence. But what we see here is the discrepancy. We always see the discrepancy. Oh, the parents will always come to us, and when we do assessment data, he's very good with other things. It's only when it comes to academic, he has difficulty. So there is a discrepancy. He said, the parents, some of them, he's very good orally. He will tell you everything. The answers come in. I don't know, but what happens when he goes and writing, when he goes back to write his exams, or when he performs in a test, what is the difficulty? Oh, that is a big puzzle for parents, teachers, and whoever is dealing with the child. Otherwise, he's quite good with so many things. So this is what we need to understand, that these children are not dumb. They are a lot of potential, and what we do is, when they come for assessment, we look for their potential. What is it that they are good at? So when we interview the parents, when we do the intake, we always make note of what the child is good at, because the parent knows the child has reading problem or writing or academic. That's why they come to us. But they need to know what the potential of the child is also. So once you understand the potential, we can definitely work on improving. The first thing is even one little smile. For example, when I'm working with a student, I tell them, "Oh, you're good at the thing," because many of them are very good with phones, and I'm not very good with phone. I don't know what is happening. How to only I just can take in calls and send messages. That's all. But what happens is the child will know a lot of features. So what I start the conversation with the child with a positive note, telling that you know so much. Why don't you teach me? And you will see there is a smile in the child's face, and that is the starting for any learning to happen. Because I believe, or we believe in our thing, is that the child must be happy. The receptiveness happy happens only when the child is going to receive something. So the happiness, it starts with the happiness quotient actually. So there are a lot of strategies, and we need a lot of time to discuss about it. But I'm going to just mention a few strategies which any person can do. As a parent, as a caretaker, and they may not be highly qualified, any person can, and any language also. So we always tell, okay, the mother doesn't know Tamil or English, they know only the regional languages. Yeah, fine. You can just translate it. And when they come, we work with a lot of, that is what professionals need to do, is not only work with the children, but they should also talk to the people who are with the children. It can be parents or siblings or caretakers, whoever it is. So that is the thing. So the first thing what we are going to discuss here is the 7 important questions you can kind of make the child aware from say when the child starts schooling. Okay, so the simple facts, because these children have reading difficulty. They any reading activity they'll tell them, please, I don't want to do it. And because there is less exposure to reading and text, they will find it difficult to even read the questions in the paper. They will, by the time they decode the words like W, H, A, T, by the time they understand what. So what we do is, these 7 important questions are from the Kansas University, which comes under the self-questioning strategy, is very important to make them independent. We can't be there like a crutch. We don't want crutches for them, because we believe these children can become independent learners. Okay, so there is a very good book written by Professor Ruan Feinstein, which says, don't accept me as I am. Because what happens many a times when parents come to know that child has a difficulty, they overdo so many things. They think that the child doesn't know anything at all. That shouldn't happen. We have to that is what I'm going to talk next. Okay, coming back to the 7 important question. This is very simple. Any parent, anywhere, you can translate it to your regional language. Also, if it is Tamil, you can, instead of who, you can tell yar. Or in Hindi, if it is who, it is kon. So like that, you bring that concept, because listening comprehension, the child is listening. Even if it's hyperactive, even if it's running around, you will see that the child is listening. So you keep on giving stimulation to the child. So the who is the question. Who means it's always a person. So when you say who, the child must understand the answers cannot be anything else other than a person. Who's your best friend? You can start the conversation like this. Who is your best friend? Ram. So again, the next one is, so anything which to do with a person is who. The next is we skip and we go to the when. When is the most important thing. It's a time factor. And children with dyslexia or learning disabilities have a lot of problem with time factor. So you work a lot. Actually, you can work a lot. You can have a lot of conversation about time. Time is just not 5:30 or 3:30 or only what is given in the clock. Your birthday is your time. Your seasons are time. It's a rainy season, winter, summer, the tropic of the equator. We talk about anything, whatever is related to time, weeks, months, years. So you take a concept and work on it with the child. You can have a conversation with the child. All these, this child will be learning in school and they will be listening to it. So you can work on time. So time is when. When you ask a question, when did you wake up in the morning? The child will give you the answer. When did you last visit your grandparents? Again, time. So that is a time. So who, what is a closed question? That is why there it's given in a box. So you can maybe make pictures like this and just put it on the wall so that the child will associate it with whatever it is given. Though if they are finding it difficult to read, so you start off by telling a story to the child and ask them who was the main character of the story. So you ask questions like that. When did they come out of the house or something like that? So next is what? What? So the first question is who, which refers to a person, and what is a closed question, like what is your name? You don't need to think so much to answer that question. That is why it's just a closed question. Okay. So the next one is where. Where is always denotes a place. That's why the arrow is given there. So where? Where did you go last week? I went to my grandmother's house. So where did you first see your friend? So in the garden. So it's a place. So where denotes a place, and then you kind of make a story and ask these 7 questions. Once they practice, that can happen in the house also. During this pandemic, I think a lot of parents can work on these areas because these 7 questions will really help them. And how is the process? The process of how you're doing. We start off like how, if it is girls, you can tell, how did we bake the cake last week? So you said, okay, this is the flour, the first one, the flour, then the sequencing. You are teaching the sequencing also in the how process. Why? Why is the most important question is which the child, you must ask, the child also needs to ask. So encourage children in asking the why questions. And which is the last one, which is a choice. So you can kind of make a story where you will have all the 7 important questions and keep repeating. Maybe this week you take a story, you make up a story on the spot, you can make a story and then ask these 7 questions. What happens? It becomes a habit for the children. So when they are reading a passage or when they are listening to some story, they will understand what it is. Who is especially when you're talking about emotions and all that, if they have an emotional problem, when did this happen? Who was the person who was causing this problem? What happened? Why I have become so sad, or why am I doing? So you are giving them an opportunity to become independent people, to think for themselves. Okay, so these are the 7 important questions, which is who, what, when, where, how, why, and which is a choice. You must show one pencil. You can't show a pencil and tell them which one you like. You have to show them 1 or 2 to show them which one you like. So this is what you are going to impart at when you are in, say, you're not in school, and when you want to kind of bring in the holistic development. We are all working to make the child independent learner or independent to become more independent. Okay, so some of the sample questions are like this. Who will sit next to me? My friend, my sister, or my mom. Okay, what is the capital of India? When will the show begin? So the time, you have to think about the time. Where are the jewels hidden? Okay, in the cupboard, in the courtyard, wherever it is. Why is a flower blooming at night? Bring that curiosity to the child. Why is mother carrying an umbrella now? So the child should kind of, you must get elicit answers like, yeah, because it's very cloudy or it's very sunny. So that is one thing. And which game will they win? Is it the football or the baseball which we are going to win? And how will they solve the problem? Suppose they get a problem, how are they going to solve the problem? Which is the first step, which is the second step, third step. So this is about the self-questioning. So we are going to the next is the talking about the stimulation. Very, very, very important. When we see, when the children come for assessment, we kind of do an assessment to find out, okay, they have reading problem, writing problem. But what you ask, if the child, the father is a banker, and we just ask, okay, you know what is a bank, what is an account, what is a savings, why do you go? The child will say, no, I don't know, I don't know. It, and like Dr. Maya was telling, it's like after a point, they'll tell everything, I don't know. So the stimulation, this is what Professor Ruan Feinstein from Israel, who has brought in lot of cognitive, he calls it cognitive modifiability, where he tells that the stimulation is the most important thing in the child. Whatever you do it for a purpose. You have to have, you, when you're talking with the children, you have to stimulate them. You are, suppose you say, oh no, I am just a carpenter, I am just a baker, or I'm just a person who is not educated much. Please, but you will know something, a farmer. So you can talk to the, have a nice conversation with the child, telling that, okay, in a bank, I go, you know, I go to the bank, I work in a nationalized bank. So you're bringing in words to the child. Actually, you can have a conversation. If the mother is working or mother is not working, what are the household, how is she making a plan, a budget in the house, all that you can kind of discuss with the child. See, when the child hears everything and what is boiling, you know, we have to boil the water for making coffee. So the child is hearing whatever she's learning in school is kind of, she's hearing that in the house also. So that is the stimulation. The more you stimulate the child, it is not like giving them in a spoon. Don't spoon feed them. It is not just because they have a learning difficulty or any academic reading or writing doesn't mean that they can't do anything. Yeah, some of them, yeah, definitely children with dyspraxia may be having some difficulty with wearing on the shirt and putting the buttons and all that. But give them a solution, give them occupational therapy. That is why a dyslexic, a professional, it's not just one person working with the child. You need a lot of people. That is why we need to be open with learning. Even parents need, when they come to us, we tell them, please, you learn, you will understand how you can work with the children. Suppose you can't afford anything also, you can definitely work with the child with the little tips given by them. A speech therapist, a language development. Don't accept if somebody you ask the child, oh, you want water, you want to eat chapatis. Yes, no, don't accept. Get them a detailed, a full sentence kind of it. That is language development we are talking about. And when you talk about doing little exercises, the brain dream exercises, and a lot of physical activities is also required by the child. I know in this pandemic it is very difficult, but in the house, whatever things they can do, you can now, the Google is there, and you can ask your friends, you can ask what, but little activities can kind of stimulate or kind of make the child, the brain more active. It is not even the thing, you have to make the brain active. So according to Feinstein, stimulation is the key word for children, working with children. You don't need to be highly qualified again and again, because the parents will come and tell, or the others say, oh, we are not qualified. That's nothing. These are little secrets which you can work with children, and you can bring in overall development. There's more of interaction between you and the child. And then the child will open up. Otherwise, the child will shun away from you. Because they are intelligent, they know. They just, there are children who will just tell, oh, I don't know the answer. Oh, I don't know this. You know, to say, I don't know. It's so easy. It's become so easy. It's a learned behavior. I don't know is a learned behavior. After a point, they know, okay, they'll keep quiet if I say I don't know. So, but when the child is intelligent in other ways, definitely this other things also should get. The current affairs, you can talk about the current affairs. You can talk about who is ruling this country and what is happening to other countries also. So you have to give them information. You can have discussion with whatever little knowledge you have. You can impart that to the child. Have a healthy discussion with each other. Even if you're watching a movie, you can tell, okay, You know what is a good character in this, what is the thing, what happened to the bad man in the end. So you can kind of even a little older children, when they are in the teenage or adolescent age, they don't tend to listen, but you can show them videos and you can tell them what is right, what is wrong, have a healthy conversation with them. The next is thinking about thinking, very important. Always the children, when you ask them, okay, what is there in your hand? I have a phone. Now all of them have a phone or a laptop or a tab, because all online education is happening. And so we need to work on thinking about thinking. It's, I think, all the people, the professionals or the people here, many of them psychologists will definitely know what metacognition is. It is about thinking about thinking. You can start a conversation with a child like this. Okay, this is a phone. You have a phone. Okay, it's a cell phone. You know there is a land phone also. Yes, I know it's a land phone. They started thinking that. So, but we need to stimulate it. It's thinking about thinking. So, how are they both same? So, you always, when you are doing comparisons, in our Indian context, you see children immediately telling what is the difference. We always look for the sameness first and then for the difference. So, how are they both same? Both of them, we can talk in a long distance, we can make calls. Okay, so that is how they are same. Both are instruments, both are non-living, because according to the age, you must accept it. Again, age appropriate discussion is very important in thinking about thinking. If they are just in the third standard, fourth standard, accept whatever is it in the lower level. It's for talking. But when you're we're talking to an older child, you must talk about it at a higher level. It's telecommunication. Get words from that from the children. So that is another thing about thinking about. So how are they different? One is just kept in one place. It can't be moved because it's a landline. So now we have a cell phone which we can carry it, and it's so flexible. So talk about what is same and what is different. You can take anything. You can take a phone, or you don't need to prepare so much that you have to work on thinking about. Take any two items and say how they are same and how they are different. So that is how it kind of triggers your thinking, your metacognition, we call it. Always state objectives, why we are doing it. Any work, any kind of study, or any kind of conversation, I'm doing this. Spend time, say about 15 minutes a day or something. It's not too long. Also, the children won't sit. Already they're going through sitting for online classes. It's become really hectic for them. So your conversation must be, why are we studying maths? State the objectives. It was actually, when we were making a curriculum for a school, we were going through a lot of resource books. And one book for reading in Singapore-based, they have a reading program. Every worksheet had an objective. It was really surprising, because every work, whatever we are doing, there is an objective for. If the child understands why we are doing it, your life becomes very easy. Because whatever they do, this is why I'm teaching you this. This is why we are learning maths. This is why, though we are unconsciously telling that, we have to state our objectives to the child for every work they do. When you are intentionally working on the child, you need to tell why we are doing it also. Okay, so that is the objectives. The next is finding the true potential. Every child has a hidden potential. Like their hidden disability, there is a hidden potential. And many times it is covered, because once the child has a learning, it's in most of the time the parents kind of slowly we will find that we are just putting a sheet on the potential and covering it off, because of the many the difficulties the child is facing with academic. Oh, my child is not reading, my child is not writing, so I stop this, I stop that, I stop this. Though they are giving the best, but again, finding what is the real potential of the child is more important, because working on their potential is easy, much easier than, like I told you, when we work with child, there are many things I don't know. I don't know to drive a car. So I tell the boy, the older boy comes, I told, I don't know how to drive. I don't know what is the first gear or second gear when you talk about, I don't know. So you find what is the real potential of the, he may be a musician, he may be a dancer. So appreciate that. See, what happens is appreciating it's a, even if you don't put them in any classes, you just have to appreciate it. You just keep appreciating, and that you start with an appreciating note when that you are working with it. You are telling, you are so good with. This is only a small area which is we need to work on. So that is a little secret again. That and working towards the other things which we are finding, which the children are finding it. That is one more area we have to look into the potential. So when we do assessment, when we work with children, when we do an assessment, we work on the potential, finding the learning potential of the child. What is the real potential? What is the other potential? What is it they are good at? And now they are talking about multiple intelligence, which talks about all these intelligence now. There are a lot of researchers, even in Chennai, there are a lot of people who started working on the multiple intelligence program. The next is effective communication. Again, when we come to children having learning difficulties, again, this is a major problem. The children, the communication is, again, like when you talk, we spoke about the stimulation, the communication part is also very, very important. How you communicate age appropriate. When the child was, then the parents bring them for consultation, they will tell, oh, my baby, my papa, the child will be about 16 or 17 years. Yeah, for you, I accept that. For for a parent, the child is a baby. But when you come, the child is listening to it. Just because they have a learning problem or they have a reading problem doesn't mean that they are not individuals as such. So how you communicate is very important. You are going to be a model. Even as a parent, how you model is very important. Modeling. So when we are trained to become strategic trainers, the first thing what they look is how you model to the child. What you model is what is your that will definitely reflect back. So your modeling is very, very important. So the communication, how you communicate age appropriately is very important. So what you're going to communicate, is it relevant? What is relevant? Tell them what is good, what is bad. What is how when people come, how do you speak? How do you kind of talk to elders? How do you talk to youngsters? So that thing, the effective communication and the 100 number of activities for that effective communication. The next is the flexibility. I'm not talking about the flexibility the children must have. The flexibility when we work, we are called mediators. We always call ourselves as mediators and not teachers or remedial tutors. Because we just mediate, the children know something. It's always, even if you say even if you say, oh, the child doesn't know anything, the child will know a little bit. So you need to understand the child already knows something. So you have to be little flexible about how you're going to approach the child. Again, coming as what Dr. Maya was talking, a lot of emotional baggage the child is carrying when the child is around. Because in this, unfortunately, in our society, we are always looking for success. What happens to when they fail? Are we giving them a kind of a support, emotional support? So that is also very important. So when the child comes to you and you're starting working, okay, today everyone will be done. What happens is you have to first find out how the child's emotional state is. So you start off with a positive note. You would have made, see, as teachers, we make a lot of lesson plans. And what happens is when we start, we say, okay, now first activity, I'm going to do the reading activity. The next, I'm going to do the brain gym activity. I'm going to do the writing strategy. We have an agenda, but we are not looking into the child. The child also should kind of approve something, what we are doing. So we have to kind of be flexible. So if the child is very tired, it has a tiring, because if they have reading difficult, especially children with dyslexia, they have a lot of fatigue because of their reading, because they come back from school, and reading is a very, very stressful uh, 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 activity for them. So they are drained out. It's not when running now. It's like you are running for after a race, you are all tired. Just like that, a reading activity, because of the traffic jam in your wiring, what Dr. Maya was talking about, the neurological difficulty, the wiring problems in the brain. We have to give them that flexibility. You have to say, okay, ma'am, I'm so tired today. You just have a little conversation with the child as the child comes in. We had so much of reading. It was a test. We had test the whole day. It was different. I think it was different. So what happens is your flexibility. You must have a list of activities in front of you, and you have to slowly take one. Not I have done this first. I have kept this in mind. This is what we have to bring in, the flexibility in ourselves. So that is what I am talking about. So we need to change the thing according to the child. As Dr. Maya again says, if the child can't learn the way you teach him the way he can learn. It's a very nice quote. And this works very well for the dyslexic students. Children with learning difficulties, you have to make some flexibility, but I'm not telling that you have to leave out everything, but slowly introduce. Start off with an activity. Change your plan according to the need of the child, and then you see that you insert whatever you wanted to do. Maybe you wanted to do reading first, but you can put it in between. You can talk to the child. You can tell them, see, in your conversation, you must make them understand that reading is also important. Yes, I will spend only little time with you for reading because I know you're very intelligent. Otherwise, only this reading is little thing bit harming you, or giving you little problems. So we will introduce that. So that time I'll accept it actually. Okay. So flexibility is more for the people working with the children. The brain gym is a very good activity. Now there are a lot of number of videos for that. Brain gym is especially working on the left and right hemisphere, so that there is a smooth connection or the crossing of our left and right hemisphere, so that there is no kind of stagnation anywhere. So the thinking process or the reading process happens smoothly. So there are a lot of brain gym exercises, super brain yoga. So whatever it is, you can start working on it. So the brain gym is one of and the physical activities. Especially when children come with a lot of emotional problems, karate is one of the best one which you can relieve your stress, because it brings a lot of self-discipline. People then the parents immediately, oh no, the kick already is getting into behavior problems. No, they become more self-disciplined. That is, again, researchers proved that karate brings a lot of self-confidence in the child and brings in a lot of self-understanding, self-concept itself. They bring in self-discipline. So brain gym and the other activities. So you can spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes on the brain gym. It's very, very effective. So for reading, there are, before you start with the reading program, you can do a little bit of brain gym and you can start your class. So brain gym and physical activities is one which I highly, highly recommend. Okay, the last one. Okay, I think we just wind up with this. This is one conversation which you can have with the child by talking to the child. This morning, the mother is having a cup of coffee, and then she starts off with the father or caretaker or the sibling, and just take a coffee mug and say, okay, now we are going to discuss about this coffee. Okay, it's a very non-academic thing where we just casually sitting and just talking. Even in your classroom, when you have a free period, you can work with any age group for that. But when you get answers, it must be age appropriate. Okay, so we take a cup of coffee and say, okay, now let's talk about this coffee, about how is coffee connected to geography? So that you can get answers. See, you'll be surprised that the child knows so much. The child will talk about the soil, and if suppose the soil, the climate, and all that. But if you find a group of child who's not even opening up and telling, okay, I don't, the child is not making the connection, then you will kind of ask a question like why. You ask open-ended questions. Okay, like you tell, why is coffee plantation not there in Chennai? So the child will think, ah, yeah, we don't plantation here. So then you are taking the child, you are mediating to the child to get the answer, to make the connection. So the child will say, yes, yes, we don't have a hill, we don't have a good soil. I learned it in geography. That is what my teacher told me. So you are making the connection. You see, very often children see subjects in isolation. They'll say, I don't like history, I don't like geography, I don't like civics, I don't like physics, I don't like chemistry. Why? Because they are not seeing the connection between them. Once you start having a conversation with this, showing the connection, and it can be anything. Actually, you can take not only coffee, you can take any thing, whatever is available, and you can see how everything is connected, have connections. So you take physics, for example, when you take physics, how is coffee connected to physics? Physics is, you talk about school, where you talk about evaporation, condensation. So what is the boiling point? Only when the water boils, you put that the what are the decoctions and all that you can talk about in physics. In chemistry, mother always tell you, she'll see parents and others talking about how coffee is not good for you. So we will talk about the chemical aspect, the caffeine in it. In biology, what are the plants? Why is in both coffee and tea are beverages? But what happened? One is taken from the coffee beans and one is taken from the tea leaves. So bring that concept into the child, bring that thinking into the child. So to make the connection in maths, we'll be asking maths, the ratio. 100 grams of coffee, we have 10 visitors. Will 100 grams, how many cups of coffee can you make? So the ratio you're talking about. Then history. Who were the first people to drink coffee? Let's go. Now there is Google. Even if you don't know, you can get, or if you don't have an internet access at all, you can always ask a friend to find out and get to understand how something happened. So you have in commerce, if you are the older students, you can talk about trading, why coffee is, and economics, you can talk about why we have a lot of tea shops in our country rather than coffee days. So they make the connection. They think, oh, because coffee is more expensive than tea. They are learning. Everything is coming back to psychology. Why are we having a, why do we, they say during stress, when you are very stressed or when you are, I think, have a cup of coffee. There is a reason for that. So this is how we take it to different subjects and show the children the connection. All these can be done uh, in a house, and especially during this pandemic when children are around, anyone can start talking about it and stimulate the child and bring in the holistic development of the child. And I think with this note, I will just uh, uh, thank you so much once again for giving me this opportunity. And um, thank you, Dr. Maya. Thank you, Binu. And thank you, sir, for giving this opportunity. Thank you, VIT. Thank you to National Institute of the Disaster Management for giving this. And I greatly appreciate that there are so many people who are coming out to help children with dyslexia. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, ma'am.
Mm.
Ma'am, there are a few questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Like one person has asked how persons with dyslexia disability is eligible for admission in professional colleges.
Yeah, there are. I had a student. Now he's just finished his engineering. in professional colleges also, they because the Madras University and the universities, I think many of them don't know that there are provisions available and for getting some kind of exemptions like extra time to write or especially in professional colleges, they get extra time to write. I think Dr. Maya also will know about that. And in schools, definitely schools, they have a lot of provisions. They get extra time. They can the CBSE board especially has given the National Institute of Open Schooling. They all work towards giving a lot of exemptions for students who have dyslexia. They get extra time overlooking spelling errors, usage of calculators, as Dr. Myers talking about the dyscalculia, children with dyscalculia. The same thing applies with university. I know Madras University has it because you can go to the section. I think it's exactly, I don't know. Maybe I can share it with whoever wants. I have all the because my PhD was on that. Yeah.
Ma'am, adding to your point, actually, some scholars has been designated by colleges where they can help them in writing the exams because this is done in Loyola College actually. So
yeah,
I know
the scribe, the scribe.
We have a scribe, yes.
Scribe, yes, we have scribes, yes.
Here I want to add one thing. I'm teaching at VIT, right? When I correct some of the papers, I have quite a few to teach. Suddenly I come across students who are having typical symptoms of dyslexia, but are studying in our college. You understand what I'm trying to say? It is not that they have been recognized, or since we are in the field, we know. It's not that they have been recognized or labeled, or they have managed. They have found their own ways to overcome the difficulties, and they're doing very well in that. So when I see their handwriting, when I know that they understand, but they have not processed it properly. Since I'm trained, I understand, I'm able to know it. But maybe other people may think it's a mistake, or he's making some errors, or he hasn't understood it. But I know that he's trying to say something, and these children are very participative in class. So when I see this child, I know he's listened, he's answered in class. His only thing is he's not able to put it across in a very fine way. So for the person who asked how to get into professional colleges, yes, there are ways, but I know there are students everywhere, not only in our college, everywhere around the world, who having problems have successfully even completed their professional degree.
Yes.
Very true. Okay, ma'am. There is one more question where Dr. Maya, you were talking about this separations. So one participant has asked, this type of separation occurred not only to the challenged students, but to any student who scored low marks in the exams. I mean, in any previous exam. It has been found among the normal students as well. There is a comment, ma'am, for what you were telling.
So you're talking about discrimination because of low performance. So this is what is there, and as I agree with them saying that even if you are normal, if you are a low performer, you are ignored. But the point is, we have to check these low performers whether they are having some disability. So that is our concern. You can unmute your mics and ask questions if you want. Participants, please feel free to ask.
No, ma'am, in this platform, there is no such provision. They cannot unmute themselves. And the participants who are wishing to ask you a question, you can put a question in the chat box, or also you can type your name so that we can make you as a panelist and you can raise the question. So it's comfortable, better you can type your question in the chat box. In case if anybody is willing, type your name and we will be making you as a panelist so that you can interact with us. And by the time both the presentation was excellent, ma'am, to get an idea about what is dyslexia and how it impacts on the life of the children, and some strategies to overcome those issues also. One of my children has a problem of writing the words towards turning downside. We used to write the words letter in the upstairs, turn into up. But he used to write some letters towards downstairs.
Inverted.
So is it a symptom of dyslexia?
Inverted.
Yeah. Invert. So is it a symptom of dyslexia, or how we can overcome this issue? What is the?
They say
Yeah. How consistently the child is doing that. Just because a child is writing instead of B and D, just for a few days, it's not. How consistently is that a major problem? So the teachers can identify that and refer to a special educator or a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, to assess the child and see whether what if they have counselors in the school, they will do it also. They will find out whether the child is having a problem, because they have assessments or psychological tools to find out that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for answering. I'll with the teacher of my student also.
Yeah.
And Mr. Lippert has asked that how can a dyslexia student be handled while in aggressive and sometimes staying behind?
Yeah.
I'm just repeating. Yeah. Got the question, ma'am?
Yes. So basically, after a while, because of the intelligence, the child will know how to kind of avoid certain things. When you ask them to study or ask them to read, slowly what happens is the child will say, I will not do it and I will not do it. And it becomes a learned behavior, and they get into tantrums and they start throwing. And then the parents keep quiet, or the teachers brand them, okay, they will kind of avoid those things. But what happened is, initially we need to find out why the tantrum has happened. Was there something, was there a previous thing that the child was forced to do, or what can be the reason? That's what, no. And another thing, a suggestion is, when the child is very aggressive, don't talk to the child. You just leave them, give them some time, and then you can start the conversation. See, what happens when you shout, then again the child will shout. The child will ultimately, because they have more energy, they will win. So you just have to wait, find out. There is always a reason for the behavior. That's why we always talk about the behavior management. It's not the child has it in itself. It is a learned behavior.
The same person has raised the question, how a teacher grow patience towards dyslexia students? Sir, some techniques. How a teacher grow a patience towards dyslexia students? Sir, some techniques. How to be patient with dyslexia students?
Patience. First thing, if you're working with children, the patience is a key word actually. See, in our classes, we have, when we were working, we have students around 10 to 15 students. If the children are screaming in the class, we just lower our voice. This is a technique. You just don't talk when the child is screaming. And after a point, when there is silence from the teacher, suppose I'm just keeping quiet, the children after a while will understand that they are not behaving properly. So the children, there are a lot of other things. When we do the training, we have a lot of sample studies, how to handle children and what is the behavior we need to find out. But one thing, if it's a group class, you just have to keep quiet, because telling them or shouting will not going to help. You just have to keep quiet. So after a point, the child understands. That's what we do. I was working in a school where all the children were dyslexic.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. The last question, I think, does the impact of the bad childhood affect in adulthood?
Yeah, I think Maya will be able to tell that. Yes, definitely.
It is very unfortunate that if a dyslexic child is not accepted as a dyslexic child early in life, you have made the damage for this whole life. Please understand this. If you are going to cover up, if you are going to ignore, if you are going to pretend as if my child is normal, then you're doing harm rather than help. Let us accept reality. For example, you can't see, you're wearing glasses. If a child can't read, accept he's got dyslexia. forget it. It is another kind of disability. We have so many disorders. We have so many problems. Why should you think something as negative? Everybody has inadequacies. And what happens is, if the parent first accepts the child, please understand, then half the battle is solved.
Yeah.
If the parent doesn't accept, or he hates the child because he is dyslexic, or so many parents feel ashamed to say that the child is dyslexic. Yes, it's okay. Till you come to term with reality, the child is not going to come in terms with reality. So first understand that you have to accept the child as the thing, make him understand nothing wrong with it. It is another kind of this problem, and we can always overcome it. Give him the confidence. I really believe in working on the child's self-esteem. Nothing else. You are great, you are good. You can't read and write. So what? Nothing wrong with you, right? So many people can't do so many things. Only these two things you can't do. The world is not going to end, right?
Yeah.
So this is what you have to keep telling the children so that they have a positive adulthood.
Thank you, ma'am. With this, I think we can come to a conclusion of the program. So really, I was going through both the presentation. It was given an overall idea to understand all the common people, to get the idea about the dyslexia and how it's impact the life of the children, and how we can make some remedy to overcome those issues. And especially with the Jayashree ma'am presentation, we could get some of the strategies to get out of these issues from our children. And overall, in my experience also, I think this dyslexia has a huge impact on the entire life cycle of the children if it is not being addressed at the initial stage. So it may affect their education and as well as their profession. In future, there may be a chance of to continue with their children. So if the particular person is having such issue, even they may not able to teach their children in the future also. So overall, we also happy with this presentation, and especially we could able to build the capacity of the common people to address this issue. So once again, on behalf of this Child-Centric Disaster Risk Reduction Center and National Institute of Disaster Management, I would like to thank our partner institution, Vellore Institute of Technology, Chennai, and especially the ma'am, Dr. Maya Ratna Sabhavati, who is behind this to organize such a wonderful program. And again, my sincere gratitude to Dr. Jayashree Ashok ma'am, who made a wonderful presentation, especially to give a lot of strategies to address these issues. Really, it was very much useful, and thank you for joining with us to conduct this webinar series in terms of protecting children from various issues. This also related to addressing the children's right to education. So in that perspective, we are looking at this issue. And so once again, I thank all the panelists, especially Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, sir, Executive Director, NIDM, and the Vice Chancellor of Vellore Institute of Technology, and the Dean of Social Sciences and Language for providing the permission and to organize this webinar. My sincere gratitude to both the speakers for made a wonderful presentation in this case. And my sincere thanks to Binu Sarai ma'am also for being with us. And if anything, the panelists would like to say, please.
No, I would just like to thank the organization for giving us a liberty to choose the topic which we thought is very relevant, which we are of course experienced in it, so we thought we'd be comfortable talking about it. So we are trying to, this is a platform where we are meeting a lot of people to bring about the awareness. And one more thing is, I would request Jayashree ma'am to talk a little about, few lines about the institute that she has in Chennai, where she is doing a lot of training, so that people were asking so many questions. Ma'am, you can put your phone number and your associating number so that they get in touch with you, so that you can help them, ma'am. That is more important, is how you can reach them, how they can reach you. That is what is important. So you can put it in your chat box, ma'am. And I thank everybody for patiently listening to us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maya. Thank you so much. And when I'm speaking as a parent. Okay, so though my all the degrees what Binu has told is just an added thing, but as a parent, I've been in the path of a parent and a tutor, so this is coming from my personal experience. Lot of tips, whatever I've given, is from the personal thing which I have done for my son. So, if you we started the center called Center for Holistic Integrated Learning and Development. So, whatever I have learned, I wanted to impart it to many because there are so many children who need help. So that is why we conduct diploma and certificate programs on dyslexia, how to handle students who are having difficulty. So if anyone has any queries or anything with to do with dyslexia, please, I'm sending my email ID and my phone number. Please contact, and we will. Our mission is that to reach out as many people as possible, so that no child is left behind. Thank you so much, Dr. Maya. Thank you so much, Binu, and thank you so much, sir, for organizing this. Yeah.
I thank my institute for giving me the permission and my dean, OBC ma'am, for everybody who was very kind to permit us to conduct this workshop. Thanks for all the participants, and especially to Balu sir, who has been very, very cooperative, understanding to see that this whole thing went off well. Thank you, sir. A special thanks to you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Information part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Attendance link is given in the chart. Participants kindly fill it. Yeah. Thank you to all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Maya. Thank you, Binu. Thank you, sir. Yeah.